I've let them see me in really intimate ways this year that felt scary, but I also think it's deepened our connections just, as a team, as women. And I think as a result, we're all doing really great work.
What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now, let's get cozy and start today's episode. We are in a season where transparency, critical conversations, and deep connections matter more than ever as we navigate these uncharted waters of collective burnout. I think we need a collective exhale. Anti-hustle is the antidote to burnout, so we also need more lightness and laughter to not take ourselves too seriously, because hustle culture isn't working for women. It's not working for anyone really. And I can think of no one more perfect than my close friend, Tamika Lewis, to explore these topics. She's also featured in chapter 4 of my book, She Builds, the anti-hustle guide to grow your business and nourish your life. And that chapter is called Gather Your Support Squad. So in today's episode, we will talk about why it's important as a leader to focus on transparency and intimate conversations to bring people closer, especially if you have a team, and also the impact of being a part of masterminds, learning communities, and building an intentional sisterhood when you are building your dreams. We'll also explore what it looks like to shift from doing your day-to-day work to being a visionary for your company. A little bit about Tamika. She has an LCSW, and she is the founder and clinical director of Women of Color Therapy, Inc., which is a mental health and wellness center that supports teens and women of color in Los Angeles, California. She specializes in women's issues and emphasizes the importance of decolonizing traditional approaches to psychotherapy. So important. Her company offers individual therapy, energy healing, self-care workshops, and massages. And Tamika is also the contributor to many publications, including Thrive Global, Washington Post, and Prevention Magazine. She's currently working on her book, Tiny Moves, Defining Moments That Change Us. She also loves collaborating with other health and wellness practitioners and speaking on topics related to women, relationships, and tools for personal success. So we're definitely going to dig into that. And to learn more about Tamika, you can visit WOCtherapy.com. I also want to take a moment to celebrate that She Builds reached #1 new release in the startups category on Amazon. Whoop, whoop. And my book is also in the top 5 for starting a business, women in business, and entrepreneurship. So if you haven't grabbed your copy yet, or you'd like to gift one to a friend for the holidays, visit shebuilds.com. Or if you listen to audiobooks like me, go to shebuilds.com/audible. And if you've read through the book as your cozy holiday companion, would you take 5 minutes to leave a review at shebuilds.com/review? Your support means the world to me, and this work just gets into more hands and is shifting the narrative on hustle culture into a narrative of more intentional building and living our lives with more presence, with more peace, and more play. So let's get cozy with Tamika. Tamika, welcome back.
Thank you. I can't believe it feels like was just kind of yesterday, but not because,
Yes,
right? Last time we talked, it was during COVID.
I know. I was like, oh, that was November 2020. And just capturing that. One of my friends, Charlie Gilkey, is calling the blip. Like, wait, what happened? And where did we go? And
Seriously.
where are we right now? Something that I was thinking about is just also how long that we have known each other, because we were roommates in LA. And that was pre-marriage. And I'm like, and I've been married for 17 years. That's a long.
I might be like an OG friend.
You're totally
like an OG crew here.
So I just love the evolution of our friendship. And even though we were roommates, was it for less than a year, maybe? Because it was right when I got engaged. And so it's interesting because I feel like we lived in close quarters for a short amount of time, but we have been like in each other's corners throughout the span of almost 2 decades of friendship and motherhood, marriage, businesses, all the things. And we hold like deep, dark secrets too.
Yeah, we've seen a lot. I think we've laughed a lot together, right? Because I think there are waves of tragedy and grief, but also just comedy, the kind of the comedy of errors, right? Like, I mean, I think you've been on the sidelines just like loving every second of my dating escapades. And then I watched you just super flourish in your business and career and stepping into like everything you declared that you wanted to be. You know? Yeah.
And now we're on this side of She Builds, being out in the world, this book that really covers, 14 years of entrepreneurship. And you were really in the beginning stages of that journey, when you've been there obviously before I even became an entrepreneur. So it's just cool. And I also got to feature you inside the book. So the intention for this conversation is just to catch people up to what it means to build with intention. And I think that you do that really beautifully. And I feel like you and I have just been ping-ponging back and forth of flourishing, like you have been flourishing too. So I'm excited to dive into some updates on what you've been building, creating, and then kind of talking about just our journey of support. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yes. Let's do it.
Yes. So, and for those who are interested, you can also, listen to our conversation that was in 2020 at jadaselner.com/178. And you share some really great gold in that conversation. So we won't revisit that, but really just some beautiful things around race and how we have those conversations with our kids and building a sense of pride and knowledge about culture and how do we have tools and care practices that sustain us and how we take care of ourselves and also how we take care of our clients and who we serve. So definitely Tamika is just full of wisdom, insight, and as you shared, laughter too. So before we get into this conversation, I think it would be really helpful for us to revisit the question of what does leading with love mean to you in this season of growth and expansion? And how are you putting love into practice, either inside your business, your personal life, leadership, anything that feels like really alive in you right now?
Yeah. So I think the word for this year around being a leader in my practice, running a practice we have about 7 therapists and a couple of interns. I've really been thinking about the word transparency. I think that, running a business, it's kind of like dating, like in the beginning stages, there's a lot of adrenaline and excitement. It's new. And then you settle in and the layers start to kind of, be pulled back and people start to really see you. Like, who are you really as a leader? Are you someone that you practice what you preach? Are you someone that I can trust? Are you someone that I can choose to mentor me, right? Like, I think these are some of the things that I've thought about in terms of my relationships with my team. And so I've let them see me in really intimate ways this year that felt scary, but I also think it's deepened our connections just, as a team, as women. And I think as a result, we're all doing really great work. I can trust that when these therapists are in the room with clients, we've already gone first. Like we've already kind of done the work together. And we all are very supportive of one another. And so we show up differently.
Can you tell me a specific moment, whether it was the first time or just any moment around going first with your own team and being transparent, and if there was any resistance around that, and how did that all unfold?
Yeah. So we read a book by Mark Woolen called It Didn't Start With You. I gifted everyone that book and I started moving through it and doing the exercises. And there were so many like holy shit moments of just like, oh my gosh, like just making connections the book kind of unpacks ancestral healing and traumas, right? So a lot of the prompts have you go back and ask questions that get you to think about your lineage and like, where are these pattern behaviors in your life coming from? So I ended up having a really intense conversation with my mom. Now, a little bit about my relationship with my mom. And usually it's hard for me to approach her from a place of just neutral, curiosity and love. And because I had been working through this book, I was able to do that. We were able to sit down and have about an hour-long conversation. And I recorded the conversation and I played it back. And there were about 10 minutes of it that were really just struck me. It made so much sense why I have certain core beliefs and thoughts about, relationships and just so many things. And I thought, how powerful would it be if all of us as a team could enter these critical conversations with people in our lives that might be able to create this shift? What we're essentially asking our clients to do is first, heal, build the courage, gather yourself, but then go out and try to practice this self-assertion and be able to make requests in your life, right? So I was so scared to share this, but I ended up sharing this segment with the team and then kind of like typing out sort of some content in a framework that we all could maybe follow. And I went first and we kind of processed the conversation. We looked at tone and, key phrases and everyone chimed in and kind of shared like their observations of just the dynamic and where they were able to share things that I didn't even catch. And so it was so powerful. And yet, they're totally seeing me. There were tears, right?
Yeah.
And it was a risk, but it was a beautiful one because now I think we're into maybe our fourth or fifth critical conversation. Everyone's kind of taking a turn and we are seeing each other in really powerful ways. It feels really special. Like this is not like common workplace type, practice. Like, I think, it was really important to set a tone of real support and non-judgment and confidentiality, like all those things that could create a safe container for it. But everyone has just showed up in such a beautiful way.
I love that model. Really, your years of practice in the school system and in your own therapy practice. What would you say is the thing that people, humans, are craving, needing, wanting the most?
I think we want to feel heard and seen, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what this really proved, because what ends up happening is, we all share, but then everyone comes back around to check in on each other or to share like points of resonance. Almost all of us can resonate with some aspect of what the other person is going through. So that human commonality, right? Like we have more in common than not. And it just helps us to have more compassion.
Yeah.
And so like we don't have I guess I just can't stress the importance of the qualities that bind a team. I think that the new thing might be around just including a little bit more emotion or human connection, right?
Yeah. Well, that and do you all name it critical conversations? Is that how you're
Yeah. Yeah.
of how we all need this? Like, I mean, you're doing it internally, in a very intimate, creating a psychologically and emotionally safe space for your team. But I'm like, oh, I can see this is what your clients are needing. This is what marriages, partnership, like to relate and to hear and to witness and to be seen and heard. So I think it's so beautiful that as a leader of your company, that you're bringing that in, that your therapist, they're having space held for them and to be seen, heard, and known the same way that they're doing it for their clients. Because I think that's something we can often get into, whether as a coach or a therapist or some type of healer, where you hold a lot of space for a lot of people. Same thing in caregiving roles and responsibilities. And it's like, who is holding you? Who is witnessing you? Who is seeing you for everything that you are doing and holding?
That's a good one. Good question. Yeah. Well, I made a couple conscious moves this year to feel held. One was I went on a trip to Peru it was a plant medicine journey. And so this was a really powerful experience. And now I kind of have this new crop of people that I know are in my corner. We're all over, right, in different states and what have you. But I know that they're kind of sending me little, shout outs and prayers from all the different corners. And I feel that, right? So I think that's one thing that's felt really comforting. And then I started a course with this woman, her name's Brenda Davies, and it's called Inspirational Leadership. So here's another group of people from all over the world. We all sign on and have this 5-hour, feels like a marathon of conversation and exploration. But I'm finding that these little pockets of community have been really helpful for me. It's just, so I don't feel like I'm alone in it.
Yeah.
Everyone's like wanting to be a healer or a leader in some capacity. So we're all there for each other.
Something that I love that you're saying is, or what I'm hearing is the power of learning communities, like communities that you are gathering around a specific piece of thought work, whether it's a book with your team and then unpacking that, whether it's, journeying, like just the power of learning to grow and evolve and deepen, our own education about ourselves and the world that we live in, but then to do it with others. And I know that you've been like a lifelong student, all the degrees, all the things. And I think that's an important point to point out about how if you don't feel that you have a community to lean on, or you're feeling isolated or alone, what is something that you're interested in learning about? And how can you do that with other people that are learning about the same thing, whether it's an organized course or, a retreat or, gathering around in a book club? Just the power of that, I think, is really beautiful, that you're still really bringing new relationships and people into the fabric of the relationships that you have in your life. Because I think as we get older, right, it's like, oh, these are my people. This is who I know. And you're like, and you're expanding that web of relationships beyond just your community.
I love that you said that, just that like curiosity alone can be the entry point, right? Into connections, because there are many women in our practice. One of the big issues is loneliness, or just feeling like, especially here in LA, many people come out here and they feel like lone rangers in these pursuits of big dreams, right? And it's hard. It's a tough place. But I think starting with that spark of curiosity, like you said, and see where that leads you, it can lead you to your people.
Yeah. Yes. And speaking of community, that is really what I talk about in chapter 4 of She Builds. We have Gather Your Support Squad, and you were a highlighted story in there of kind of my first like mastermind partner based on Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill. And I didn't know anyone else who knew what like a mastermind accountability partner was. Can you just take us back to like that moment? I remember, I think we were closing down Little Sprouts Playhouse in Kauai. And I was like, I need to get a degree. So I was reaching out to you about, you have an MSW and I wanted to like study, a master's in social work. So I was just kind of trying to learn about that process. So that was kind of, we were updating each other and how shitty things were and how we were rebuilding and re-envisioning. Can you kind of take us back to that season of our friendship?
Yeah. Oh my, I don't know how we stumbled upon one another. Like, yeah, I guess maybe it was you kind of doing your own investigative interviewing and like outreach, right? And then I was going through a really hairy time in my life with my ex-husband and divorce, and really super thirsty for some sort of outlet, right? And I think you and I kind of agreed on this weekly time that we would meet, and we called it our mastermind, right? I guess I didn't know if we knew that it was mastermind back then, or maybe we did, but it was our standing appointment once a week. And what I loved about that, it was so healing. It was intentional. It wasn't a time, there were many other spaces where I was kind of venting and feeling all kinds of being in my feelings. But when you and I got on that phone, it was really about us building our dreams and strategizing and, challenging each other on that. Right. And I am eternally, eternally grateful for that, because it really shifted my whole outlook on what was possible for me on the heels of what was a real tragedy.
Yeah. And for me, it was like closing down a brick and mortar business, feeling like a failure. And at that time, George and I were just like, I don't know how this is all going to work out. Like just fighting over money we didn't have, trying to, plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like, okay, maybe I'll go back to school and get a degree. And that didn't happen, but I was so close to going back to school during that season. But it was this time it was very generative, right? That we were both learning, as they're talking about, we were reading books, we were learning about, how do we build a business on the side? Well, I mean, how old were the kids at that time?
Little babies. Whew, they were like, I think Hunter was not even one.
Yeah.
And one and like 3. And
and so it was probably like 4 or 5. Like it was.
Yeah, we were both like super just hungry for it, right? Like God, I remember just the energy that we had and the drive that we had, the things that we were reading and excited to talk about, right?
And from that, like kind of that consistency of conversation, I was really encouraging you to like write an ebook, make an ebook, and you did it. Like, and I was like, I'm writing an ebook too, but you like beat me to the finish line. I just want to talk about this for like a moment of, when we're parallel playmates and we are building, we're creating, we're strategizing. Can you speak to the experience of what happens where there's this like, this person like, oh my gosh, they're ahead of me. Oh, and now they're ahead of me. I don't know. Did you ever?
Yeah. That is so tough, right? Because I think it's the secret to real loving sisterhood is that you have to be in a constant space of joy for your sister, right? And really kind of check yourself when you fall into that comparison trap. And I've certainly like experienced that. You and I kind of started together, and you went on a trajectory that took you one way, and I went, in another direction. And there are a number of variables, right, involved in each path, right, that you consider. I had to be intentional about staying in a space of like celebration for you and for all the women in my life who are killing it, right? And then stay just super focused in my lane with what I knew I was doing and why that was my unique path, and to really be patient with that process for myself. Right.
Yeah. Cause I experienced the same of like, you wrote the book, you didn't even create an ebook. You're like, I'm going to get it printed and next generation graduate. Can people still get that book?
I don't know, girl. I think that I got to go see if that website's even up. You know, when you're on to the next and you're just
like, where is that? But I bet you there's some really valuable resources that I could be sharing with Zoe right now, who's a sophomore in high school. And it's actually wild because Zoe will be a first generation graduate in because like neither George or I have college degrees. And so I'm in this like antsiness of like, I want to be there. And also I don't necessarily have the experience because I didn't have that space held for me and like figuring out next steps in college and things like that. So I don't know, go find it and let me know if it still exists and I'll link to it in the show notes. But I remember feeling jealous. Like I was like, wait, what? I was like sharing all these strategies of like an ebook and I'm writing mine, but like it took me a million times longer to get it together. And I think that happens in our relationships of, I have another friend, Nikki Elledge Brown, who she wrote like 90,000 words for her manuscript. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, oh, I wrote 30,000 like a few weeks later and thinking like, that's amazing, but it's not as far as she was. But then she had a baby, all the things happened. And so my book is being published before hers is, so it's just an interesting dance that we have. So I love that invitation to stay in celebration for your sister, but then also to stay in your own lane and your own pacing and timeline for what you're building, creating, because our life circumstances are different and nuanced, and to stay in that season of support and encouragement for not only our friends, but also ourselves.
Yeah. I think we're all testaments to the destination. The journey can look so many different ways, and yet you arrive, right? Like you get there, like you're there, right? Like it's been years, but here you have your book in your hands, and that's where the treasure is.
Right? Yeah. But I also think it's a little Paula Abdul, like, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back in our lives in all different areas and arenas. It's like exiting Simple Green smoothies and having to like have my identity crisis and like rebuilding and like, oh, how do I do this on my own? And redefining. And sometimes I say we're not a startup, we're a restartup. We're rebuilding, we're reimagining what we want to build next by the new information that we get from ourselves. So I'd love to have you share a bit about what you are building right now, because as far as the destination of like where you, at that time, you were still working at the high school, but that has shifted and changed and you have your own practice. So just tell us a little bit about what you've been able to build and create in this season as you are building.
Yeah. Well, I still have to pinch myself on occasion. Just the joy of waking up and being able to kind of design my day. It's the greatest gift, I think, ever, right? I was working in the high school for many, many years and then left my position in 2018 and started my own private practice. And then around 2019, I really saw the need for more therapists of color and for there to be a space for women of color in the Valley here. And so then I started Women of Color Therapy with 2 therapists, me and 2 other therapists. And then over the course of 2019-20, we grew to up to 8 therapists. And as that was forming, I saw, when you build, it brings on other needs, right? It just kind of, it necessitates like other things, other skills. So I just was trying to like grow and learn and then support this team that we were building. But what I realized is I have the really exciting privilege to help usher in new therapists and integrating approaches that are more relevant to people of color. And so this turned into a lot of mentoring and educating and training and putting together topics and meetings and workshops and things that can help us all become better clinicians. So that was kind of another branch of what I was doing just as a therapist. Now there's more development and training, which I really enjoy. And then we have interns. We have now interns from UCLA and Baylor University. And that's a new part of the program. So every year we cycle in a couple of interns and, they're at the very beginning stages, learning things in the classroom, but then having these real experiences in the rooms with clients. And so really helping to strike the balance there and in educating them. So that has called me to shift away from doing more direct clinical work to being more kind of the overseer and the visionary, right? And support the kind of heading the support team of all of these key people.
Yeah. Well, I talk about this, if people decide to grow, a team, then a lot of your energy goes, instead of pouring all that time and energy into your clients, your customers, your community that you serve, you're building and mentoring that next level for them to serve the clients, the customers, the community. And so you're pouring into them so that they can pour into the people that you used to pour into. So it's like, it creates a little bit of distance from that front of line, but also a deepening of your work and having to kind of unravel your way, right? Or your process of how you think. There's a couple of things that were coming up for me, but one was just, could you name any themes, distinctions, topics that are important for women of color that you have seen come up in your practice that needs to be named and that people need to be looking out for as well when they're looking for that type of clinical therapeutic support in their lives?
Yeah. Well, as a team, we're also talking about liberation psychology and just this idea of like decolonizing traditional psychotherapy, which, when we learn all of these theoretical approaches, they're usually based in white dominant models of thinking. And so this is not always considerate of us, right? Of our people. And oftentimes they're extracted from the things that were inherent to our people, right? They're just sort of renamed and repackaged, but they belong to us. So I think what we've been trying to do for ourselves first is be mindful of the way we're living decolonized lives, right? Like whether that's making time for rest and like, I love the title of your book, like moving away from hustle, right? This idea of perfectionism and there being urgency all the time, right? And integrating music and just all the things that we know in our bones as people of color. So practicing that first ourselves and then finding ways to bridge that knowing with our clients that already kind of lives inside of them. I think one of the questions that we've had to grapple with is the question of what do we want to be liberated from and what do we want to be liberated to? And that's a really big question if all you know is kind of moving on the hamster wheel, right, of conventional living, to suddenly be told, hey, there's actually a whole different wheel over here and it's got a whole different view and you could feel good on it, right? Like, but people are like, wait, no, but I know this wheel. Like, this is the wheel I know. This is the wheel I'm going to stay on. So that takes time, right? To get someone to just stop for a minute and question the ways that we've all currently been living and think about, wow, what could it be? And am I already okay? Like maybe there's nothing really wrong with me. I've been pathologizing myself my whole life, but maybe I'm actually good, right?
Yeah. Can you describe a specific moment for you or how you have, like, what you are liberating yourself from and liberating to?
Well, I think that my current lifestyle is a testament to that. I grew up with a mom who worked 12-hour days, and what I knew was kind of the strong Black woman trope, the just constantly working, not lots of joy really present. I've been really intentional about infusing laughter and storytelling and play into my day-to-day life, even as a mom, with my kids. Like, we're laughing more than we're bickering, which that's a huge shift for me, because I feel like there was more conflict in the home that I grew up in. And so feeling a sense of ease and play, I think, has been really game-changing for me personally. And then honestly, like, just, allowing my kids to understand a limitless way of living and being, that they get to define for themselves what ideas of success are, the way they've seen mommy be able to do that and write that story for themselves, I think is really powerful.
Have you had like a sit down conversation? What does that look like to communicate that to your kids?
Yeah, I think it's ongoing conversations. And, being a therapist, like, I annoy the shit out of them because I'm always,
which I love. So I'm like, tell me how you did it so we can all do it too.
I'm always like, let's process, or even if we're watching a show or something, like, pause. Okay, so what do we think about? What does this mean for? It could be the slightest, silliest thing of like, see, Papa, this is why. Or, okay, even like, recently my daughter got to meet Alicia Keys.
Oh
right?
my goodness.
And,
Can we just...
and that was like epic.
That video was so amazing. Y'all follow Hunter because she's the next thing. Such a beautiful, I'm such a huge fan of Alicia Keys. And I'm like, if I had a dream client, like, who could I coach? I would love to be Alicia Keys. Yeah. But so beautiful to see her in her like courageous, confident power of like this singing the song, like Fallen. And it was so heartwarming. I'm going to link to the post that you posted on Instagram so folks can see, because it's so beautiful. But like, she was just like, this is the best day of my life. And the second best day of my life will be when I'm singing on stage with you, Alicia. Like, just that someone in their power and like knowing their gifts and even shaky, nervous, all the things to just like find deep in the belly and like, I'm here to express myself. So powerful. Okay, continue on.
Well, I think it was a moment of seeing a slight break in like generational trauma. I think in our bodies, we're still trying to decide, is there a place for me here? Right. And when I watched Hunter and I watch her move, she leads with a knowing, like, oh yeah, I belong here. Like, this is my universe too. And to see the way that she stepped up to the plate and just pulled her little self together and take advantage of, that moment was such, I feel like that was a testament, a very powerful testament to me. I kind of felt like, all right, I'm done. My work is done. Like, I'm good, because to know that she had that kind of confidence. But the other funny part of it is, we got seats that were about 10 rows back, and I asked security to let her go to the front of the stage. And I kind of shared with her, like, you deserve to be in the front of rooms, like, always find your way to the front of the room. Right. And so just an example of how I take the experiences and find a little kind of lesson or something, right, to translate. And I know she'll remember that, because look what happened by her getting to the front of that room. She got called back. Alicia Keys, wanted her to come back stage and meet her.
Yeah. I saw Swiss Beats in backstage, all the things. And I love that conversation of letting her know that she belongs there, because I actually talked about this in my podcast episode when I share my story of how I met Justin Timberlake and Prince. And I actually had very similar experiences as a child. My parents took me to concerts. And even if we had like nosebleed seats way up there, like my father would find a way to get us to the floor, to the front. And that made me feel like I belong here. And that's how, like, even when my parents weren't with me and I went to concerts, it's like, oh, how can I find where I belong. I don't belong over here in the nosebleed seats. How can I get over here? Where's the after party? Where's the this? Like just this confidence of I belong here in the front, not in the back seat. So I love that Hunter got to experience that and you got to witness it.
Yes, yes. And I just want to say, I can see that even in you now, Jada, like even when you kind of went into the world of online entrepreneurship and kind of identified the people that were maybe in the front of a line or that you wanted to align with. And then that's what happened, right? You built those relationships, right? So it's like not quite a concert, but like you still move that way.
Yeah.
Which is really powerful.
And I think it's being able to identify that inherent value and worthiness within ourselves, that it's not a metric, external metric of success that allows us to be in the room. And it's like, oh, how can I add value? How can I share something that I know? How can I contribute to the conversation, even if I don't have X amount of dollars or X amount of followers, just trying to find what do I have to give and how can I contribute? So I think that piece is really important. I also want to highlight how Hunter was singing every lyric and just like, I am here with you, Alicia. Like Alicia was like, yo, come to the backstage because she felt her like honoring her work on stage. Like that's another way of connecting with people, right? Like being in someone's course or going to their live event and letting people know, like, I'm being impacted. I'm nodding my head. Like I'm here, I'm present. And then, I mean, giving compliments or just appreciating someone's work. Like we all want that to be heard, to be seen, to be known. Alicia wants that too,
Right. That's such a great point. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think it's admirable when you see someone be such like a student of your work and it makes you feel good, right? I'm sure that's how she felt. Alicia, to see this young girl, so young.
Yes.
You have studied all of her lyrics.
I know. You mentioned also like bringing joy and laughter, right? To kind of counter hustle culture of to not always be in that state of just like, grinding it out. What does that look like in your day, in your home life and business? Like if you can describe any like specific practices that you do to keep that joy and laughter present.
Oh my gosh, we are just silly. I mean, from the shows we watch, to we're playing games, or we can be a pretty sarcastic family sometimes. You and I joke because we were watching The Office, and when the kids were like 9 and 11, and then there were some questionable moments, but we love like comedy. Like we all have the same like timing, and probably me and my son more so. And we love watching SNL together. So
we watch SNL too.
Just like, and then like our morning commute with my son, we're listening to Trevor Noah and we're laughing. Like, I just love to be laughing. Right. Yeah. So even on team meetings, they always know I'm going to have some cheesy like opener, or whether it's like Outkast song or something. Right. Because I just think we can't take all this so seriously.
Yes. I love that you shared that. And we took Zoe to our first stand-up comic show with, oh my goodness, John Mulaney.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
But it was so fun just to be laughing, even because we watch a lot of stand-ups at home, and but to like bring like to have the live stage energy and presence. And now we watch like, toxic TV, like Love is Blind. And Zoe's all into it. And it's great because there's commentary though, like when we were watching, like, it's like, oh, that's toxic, or, ooh, that's not okay. Being able to, and also something in that lets me know like, oh, my kid is going to have, hopefully have some boundaries and some like, that's not okay, or to have those type of conversations. So I love that you use entertainment, TV shows as a way of having dialogue.
Yeah.
Even George and I recently listened to a podcast, well, actually, it was like a video interview with Esther Perel and the creator of Savage Love. But there's something so powerful about sharing, like witnessing, listening to something at the same time to then open up dialogue for conversation. The same thing with critical conversations, right? We're reading a book and it's kind of giving us some structure and a guardrail to then have safer conversations. And, you know, for us, it's like having conversations about relationships and long-term marriage and all of these things that feel so uncomfortable and scary to bring up or have. And so it's just such a gift that people are sharing their voice, their ideas, their stories, their thoughts, then to help inspire us to have conversations with the people that matter to us.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny. So I was on a date with Satori, my son, and I was doing all the talking. I was asking all the questions. And I finally said, Papa, okay, if this were a date, like you would not get a kiss at the end of the date. He's like, I'm like, you haven't asked me anything. So I'm like, think of a couple questions, to ask me. And so he's like, well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I could just be myself because it's just you. And I'm like, no, on the contrary, it's like with the people that like love you the most, like the people that you're right. Cause we think, well, I don't have to try in these like more comfortable settings with like people that, they're going to need it. Right. And I'm like, no, I'm like, these are the people that you actually want to give more of you and put that effort in because I have your back. Right. So he came up with a couple of questions and got a little bit better. But I'm also trying to help his game, he's 14 and I am trying to help him out. It was so funny though. So funny.
Do you do one-on-one dates with your kids? Like, cause you're single mama, holding down the fort at home, running a business with 8 therapists, like your plate is full. Is that a practice that you have, or what does that look like?
So it ends up just naturally happening. Although recently I posed this idea of each of us getting to plan the date, like all of us would go, but each of us would plan like our idea of what would be fun. And so that was neat just to hear what everyone's idea of that was. But I think I naturally just end up having separate time with them. And that is really important. It's really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I'm curious for you if you have any words of wisdom, insights that you would share for someone who is building, in celebration of She Builds, especially when they are carrying a lot of responsibilities. They are holding a lot of space for people in their work, at home, especially for you being like the primary core caregiver in your children's lives. And just to see the evolution of your vision unfold over all these years, from us having those first mastermind sessions to just supporting and cheering each other along the way, and seeing the timeline of it all, right? Of how long it took to like not be in the school system full time, to then have your business and your practice and expanding that. And you're also moving into kind of, you can share a little bit about the transference that's happening even in the business that you're building right now. But, just what would you share to like Tamika a few years ago was like, the traction isn't happening. The dream isn't happening. It's taking too long. Like, and I'm here working my booty off. Like what, if there's anything that you would say.
Yeah. This year it sounds really simple and maybe a little cheesy, but when I went to Peru, I returned to like a connection with nature. We spent a lot of time in the garden, and at one point I was belly flat in the grass and my head was like kind of just pressed into the grass, and we played with dirt. And I know that seems like really silly, but that's not something I rarely made time for. Nature and walks and looking at like the natural order of things and how that can inform our wisdom, right? Our even attunement, like being able to connect to our bodies. And I wish that I would have done more of that, because maybe I would have, and I'm starting to do it now, it would have kept me healthier, right? Just in terms of sleeping better and slowing down and just having gratitude, because you can go the route of muscling through and just like, the grind method, or you can go the route of a kind of a slower path, but appreciating and taking it all in, like not missing life along the way. And I wish that there were definitely some things that I missed, right? Just being so dead set on hitting milestones at certain times in my life. So going outside, like sitting, connecting, making time just for yourself to do those things and being with Mother Earth, I think is something I've learned this year that I'm practicing. And other little things like taking a minute to pray, before eating, just all these subtle things that we don't do when we're in hustle mode. It's important to do those things.
And it doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah.
So do you walk now, or how do you integrate and kind of continue? Are you like belly in grass, facing grass now? Or like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, right. So there's a park nearby. These dang mosquitoes. I don't know how the mosquitoes are. They didn't have the mosquitoes in Peru, so I didn't have that issue. But I have this really nice backyard. So I do try to go out and like sit outside, rather than kind of being holed up in the office.
Yeah.
I'm just getting fresh air. Sometimes I'll go and just, even like if I don't have a lot of time, even just parking near the park, the lake here, and just having a different view. Really, right? The view of the lake or some beautiful trees, like that can immediately shift you, because it's all about like just returning to like just the essence of who you are, the essence of who all of us are, which we are of the earth. We're connected to the earth and divine. I mean, I have certain beliefs around that, but what are the spaces where you can make those connections? You have to go to them. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I do a very simple practice like that too. It's just stepping outside, letting the sun, like feel the warmth of the sun on my skin. And it can just be 5 minutes. It could be 2 minutes. It could be just state change, perspective change. So I think that's really beautiful and powerful. Tamika, how can people support your work and what you're doing and building? I know, you're working on a creative project right now, but if there's anything, how people can learn more about your body of work.
Yeah. Well, you can find us at Walk Therapy, so WOCtherapy.com. And we are we just had a workshop recently. So for anyone who's local in LA, we are hosting a series of in-person workshops. And I think the next big move for Walk Therapy is we're trying to move into an actual house, a home, which was also inspired, I think, by Peru, because this idea of having a garden or, just a really inspired space for women to be able to come. So that's on the dream line that we really want to see happen in the next year. But yeah, for services for therapy or workshops or anything like that, you can find information on our website.
And what are like just some, like one or a few of the names of the type of workshops, just so people can get like a sense and get like, ooh.
Yeah. So this last workshop was so juicy. We looked at career, love. So the love piece, these are all kind of the areas that women, I think, struggle with the most: money, career, and love, right? I'm blanking on the exact title of that workshop, but we had a guy come in and there was a segment called Ask a Man. And so all the women, it was interesting, right? Because we come together and we have questions about, well, why do men do this or do that? And it went over almost an hour of women asking these very honest questions. But our speaker also gave some really important insights as far as what men are missing and what men really long for that they don't have. And
can you share one of those answers?
Well, like this question of, well, why can't, as women, we like to have a certain level of communication, a certain depth, right? His name is Travis. His whole thing is like, there aren't many places that men can go where they're practicing that, right? Where they're able to practice having these more deeper emotional conversations. But to be able to find that, it's usually an older mentor or some, older figure or parent figure that men have to seek out to be able to beneath the surface and really exercise those muscles. Because like he was saying, guys get together at sports events or around like music and
that's drinking.
That's not a context for depth.
Deep.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that's something, George, there's this organization called Sacred Sons, which is really allowing men to tap into the more sacred masculine, but he's hosted and facilitated just peer-based men's groups, just like friends, like let's go deep and like tune into our bodies. But I love that you share that they don't have the practice and like our society and culture has not prioritized that as something. So I know this next generation kids is going to have a lot more emotional depth and capacity to, like, we need it to survive.
Yeah. Yes. Let's pray. I'm working on my son. I'm working on putting out at least one.
You're like, practice. What are the questions to ask? Let's go.
I'm trying to get him ready, Jana. We'll see. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so excited. Is there anything as we wrap up and say goodbye for this conversation, but not goodbye forever, that you would like to say or share?
Well, no, I'm just really grateful for you and this platform that you've built and just the intentionality, I think we've talked about, that you and I have brought into our friendship. And I wish that for many people out there, right? It's a really beautiful thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Tamika.
Love you.
Thank you so much for your heart and attention and listening to Lead with Love. You can always get the links and resources mentioned in each episode over at leadwithlovepodcast.com so that you can build a sustainable business and live a creative life on your terms. If this message, Leading with Love, resonates with you and you want to take a stand for remembering that there are humans with beating hearts behind the numbers, I would love for you to subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people spread more love in the world, which we really, really need. I also love hearing from you. So as you're listening, take a screenshot, share your favorite takeaway, and tag me on Instagram and Facebook at Jada Selner. I really appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.